Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Tonight, we've got updates. The Presidential Commission on College Sports featuring the Big 12's very own Cody Campbell and some dude named Nick Saban is moving forward. It is moving forward with Nick Saban in place because of a couple of conversations that happened after Saban really tried to walk this thing back and say, hey, you know what? We don't really need this thing. Why would we let anybody involved with the Big 12 or one of these smaller rinky-dink conferences get involved here? Now Nick Saban is singing a different tune. We'll explain why and talk about exactly why and what that means in the grand scheme of things. Plus, it's been a lot of chatter on social media the last few days. I have seen all the Twitter warriors out about the dollar figures that were released with everybody's tax returns. And by everybody, I mean all of the different conferences. So we have seen now what the Big 12 payouts were for this past year. We have seen what the ACC payouts were. Obviously, the SEC and Big 10 as well. But as it relates to here, a little bit of infighting between the Big 12 and the ACC. So what does it really mean? Does the ACC really have a one-up on the Big 12 right now? We will cover all of that. And I want to talk about Big 12 Game of the Year. Big 12 Game of the Year. What is the Big 12 Game of the Year? If you want to respond to that right now, obviously you can do so in the chat. You can also reply to my tweet. You might have a chance at getting in the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter if you do that. So it's at JL Kurtz on Twitter, as you can see there at the bottom of the screen. But I asked all of you, and I got, much like anything with the Big 12, answers absolutely all over the place. And when I put together a list, I put together what I thought were the 5 biggest games, but my others receiving votes was very long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I came up with 13 total games when trying to do this, which is just evidence to how crammed it is in the Big 12 in general, and especially up at the top of the conference. So that's the lineup for today. Please hit me up in the chat. If you want to make sure that your question or comment reaches me tonight and gets on the show, you can click the $ below the chat box. That will attach a super chat donation. Attach a donation to it, make it a super chat, which ensures that I read it on the show. So that is a very easy way to get connected. There are totally free ways to support the channel as well. One of those being just simply like the video. Appreciate everybody who does that. You like the video and subscribe to the channel, both totally free. It is also totally free to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com. Now, I have to thank all of you. I know not all of you are subscribed. If you're watching this, maybe this will be motivation too, but it's totally free. You'll get Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times per week, twice per week right now. I try to do it 3 times per week during football season. But I'm going to break down the big stories for you, how it relates to the Big 12, plus keep you updated on every major story that's happening throughout the week. I just passed 4,000 subs, okay? 4,000 plus now subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. I've been able to do that in about 10 months. So I appreciate everybody who has subscribed. Genuinely appreciate all of the support with that. It has gone far better than I ever imagined it would when I launched the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. So thank you so much to everybody who has done that. Genuinely, I do mean that. And appreciate everybody who supports all of the content that I do here. You guys are great. There is one other way to support. That is by contributing on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. And if you do that and leave me a question or comment, I will kick off the next show with it. So even if you're not watching this live, you can still be a part of the show. And we had a couple of comments from my guy, Bob. Thank you, Bob, for your contribution and your support of the channel. So Bob is a BYU fan. He pointed out a couple of things. One, to tie together the conversation about BYU's schedule next year, he said BYU is playing at East Carolina because East Carolina came to Provo in 2022, and BYU's policy was to complete all G6 schedule agreements that started before joining the Big 12, as with at Wyoming last year. No cancellations or buyouts, which Tennessee did to BYU in 2023. So that is definitely commendable. Yes, appreciate that, Bob. And then Bob also said on Brian Santiago, who I talked about on the last show, the new AD hire who's replacing Tom Holmoe, said excellent analysis on Brian Santiago. For those who worry about in-house promotions, Tom Holmoe, Lavelle Edwards, Bronco Mendenhall, and Dave Rose were all assistants before taking their respective head jobs. Count me in Santiago's corner. That's a pretty good list. That is a pretty good list of hires cut from the same cloth that have worked out very well. So point taken, Bob. It's adding some really good follow-up context to the words that I gave, where I basically said, look, BYU seems like a place where, because you have such a culture, it's going to lend itself toward internal hires working out better than they would at a lot of places. And you just provided me with some good evidence to back that up. So thank you. Thank you for that, Bob. Okay. Pacific Northwest U. That's very good. I am indeed a sub above. Is that Jersey Mike's? Who says that? Someone who's not advertising with me, but they should. We could both commandeer that. We could both commandeer that saying. Carter, I'm sorry. Let me get on to the Nick Saban piece of this. Okay. How about that? We'll see if that's a little more enticing to you. So after Nick Saban hit the eject button on this presidential commission, said, hey, we don't need this on the Paul Feinbaum show. We don't need a whole commission. Everybody knows what to do. We just need someone to actually do it. Nick Saban is now back in. Nick Saban's tone and tune has changed, but you're going to love the wording if you're a Big 12 fan on how exactly this happened. Okay. And I will explain in just a minute. Plus, we did get, thanks to a CBS Sports article, some detail on what this committee is actually going to attempt to do and perhaps a timeline. So there are some updates here on the Presidential Commission on College Sports, which has really taken over the last couple of weeks and definitely could be one of the biggest stories in college sports in a long time. It also could be absolutely nothing. I think this is a very high ceiling, low floor kind of thing. This could amount to literally zero. It could change on a whim. There could be too much happening in the world that nothing gets accomplished with this. Or it could be the most impactful thing to happen to college sports in years, decades, perhaps, depending on what happens with all of this. So we got multiple reports on social media about what happened after Saban went on the Paul Feinbaum show. It had been reported that Saban was going to be co-chair along with Texas Tech billionaire booster Cody Campbell of this Presidential Commission on College Sports. Then Nick Saban goes on the Feinbaum show and does say, like, I don't know that we necessarily need a commission. I just, have some thoughts. Everybody knows what to do. We just got to do it. Really downplayed the idea of needing this thing or seeming like he wanted to be involved. Well, now Ross Dellinger tweets, Nick Saban met today with Cody Campbell, the Texas businessman, leading the yet-to-be-announced Presidential Commission for College Sports. The commission will continue developing, with Saban included. Further direction from the White House is expected. So it is still on. It is still going to happen. Brandon Marcello from CBS Sports said Nick Saban and Texas billionaire Cody Campbell met in person today to discuss the Presidential Commission on College Sports. The conversation was positive, and the expectation is Saban will be involved. So I want you to notice a couple of things here, how a couple of these tweets are worded. We're talking about Saban still being involved, right? But it's, hey, in tweet one, it says the commission will continue developing with Saban included. So it's like Saban is just a piece of this. He does not seem to be the meat of it. Like, hey, the commission is going to continue developing, and yes, Saban will be there. That makes it seem like, hey, commission was going to happen, whether or not Saban was going to do this thing or not. The other one, the conversation was positive. The expectation is Saban will be involved. So again, the expectation is Saban will be involved, but there is clearly something happening seemingly with or without Saban, the way this is being worded in these tweets, which I don't know about you guys, but I like hearing that because we know Cody Campbell's on board with this thing. We know Cody Campbell is committed to this. So it really feels like the Big 12's got the wheel, man. The Big 12's got the wheel. This is the co-chair that is really committed, and he's having to talk Nick Saban into being involved, which is fine. Hey, bring Nick Saban on board. That's okay. Hopefully he doesn't get his way with a 40-team cutoff, but it really feels like Cody Campbell has such a huge level of influence over this thing, and we know that he is the one, it's already been reported by Ross Dellinger, that has a direct line to the president himself. So there's a lot to like about the level of influence that is happening here. And it really feels like it was kind of like, okay, everybody acknowledging, yeah, Cody Campbell is driving the bus on this thing. He's going to have Nick Saban come along after Saban seemed to be backing off. But I love it, man. Cody Campbell could be one of the most important figures in Big 12 history. We'll see. Another tweet, White House leaders have begun pooling recommendations for commission membership from those at power conferences, NCAA, and athlete groups. Membership is expected to be 10 people or less with a goal of political and cultural diversity. Now we get into the CBS Sports story, which is where we start to get more info here. I'm going to have more on that, the amount of people on the committee in just a second, because I do think that is key. You cannot let this thing get too big. If you have too many people on this, you're just going to have way too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many ideas, too many thoughts. You won't get anything done. It needs to be people that are people who get stuff done, one, and not too many of them, so that everybody can move forward. To read from the CBS Sports article, but Saban publicly questioning its utility. He has been involved behind the scenes and recognizes the value Trump could bring in delivering a federal solution. Quote, I know that Nick and Cody are talking on the phone a lot, Tommy Tuberville told CBS Sports, and that active work was being done on building the commission's roster around them. He referenced American Football Coaches Association Director Craig Bull. So Craig Bull is a name that could make sense, apparently, former North Dakota State head coach as well before he was at Wyoming, that could be on the commission. That makes sense to me. He's a guy that obviously has the ear of all the football coaches across the country, being the AFCA executive director. Here's the piece. According to Tuberville, the key is not overstuffing the group with too many names so that it becomes unwieldy and doesn't accomplish anything. I love CBS Sports puts this in here. Far too many NCAA working groups have experienced this over the years. Yeah, I think, Brian, committees like to talk. You're right. And the NCAA has been, I feel like, the ultimate type of organization that is all about that. Just lots of talking, lots of going in circles, not much moving forward, making progress, doing things that actually truly, really help. As CBS Sports detailed last week, Saban and Campbell have publicly shared their views on several topics, ranging from NIL to the transfer portal to Olympic sports. While Saban has constantly reiterated players deserve to be paid, he testified at a Senate hearing last year it wasn't in the spirit of college athletics for whoever wants to pay the most money, raise the most money, buy the most players is going to have the best opportunity to win. That's a pretty loaded statement. If we're going to unpack that one, I mean, one layer would be everybody would say, well, there have been a lot of schools that have been very successful, perhaps Saban's own, who were giving guys paper bags full of money back in the day, paying them under the table and paying them the most money. And that's why they were winning. You could also come at it from the angle of like, okay, Nick, but at a certain point, it was, the schools that paid the most in terms of facilities and everything that you were allowed to spend money on. Those would be the ones that would be attracting the most kids. And in some ways, it was still about spending the most money to have the biggest opportunity to win. If you want to retrace this back and really unspool that, you could definitely go down that road and make a good case for that. But I also do understand what he's saying. If it is literally just directly paying millions of dollars to the players, and it's just about who can get the biggest oil booster to back them with the most money, is that really all that fun? I mean, obviously money is a part of any sport, but a little more interesting, a little more equitable if you have some sort of a salary cap. I mean, there are a million different angles you could go with that statement, but I understand what he is saying there. Here's another Tommy Tuberville quote. Quote, you're going to eliminate, the Tuberville took aim straight at Texas. He said, you're going to eliminate 90% of schools because they don't have the money. Look at Texas. Nobody's ever going to beat them again if we allow them to keep going the way they're going. Well, Tommy, Texas has not won a national championship yet. Okay, so I would just point that out. All right, they're not infallible even with the money, though things are going pretty well on the 40 acres. Tuberville said, again, I've got nothing against Texas. They're going by the rules, but we've got to hopefully make it work out. I think there's some irony in this, like Tommy Tuberville's talking about this whole idea of what this presidential committee can do. And I mean, one of the guys on it, Cody Campbell, has as much money as anybody. And Texas Tech has a roster that a payroll for their roster that's basically equal to, very similar to, at least Texas this year. So I mean, I don't know. There's a lot going on right in that same room at a place that Tommy Tuberville once upon a time did coach at. As far as other things the committee is supposedly interested in doing, according to the CBS Sports article, They mentioned getting all 50 states to operate the same way with NIL laws. That's Cody Campbell has discussed that ad nauseum. They want to find a way to preserve Olympic sports, which is something that I think becomes pretty important just to the overall college sports experience. I don't think anybody really wants this to just be boiled straight down to like football and men's basketball. But still no mention of the Sports Broadcasting Act. And I think that's where, back to the Josh Pate comments from a couple of weeks ago about like, hey, there are some things they could do if you carry this all the way out that would be in the best interest of college sports, that would not be in the best interest of the Big Ten or the SEC. Will you have the power to actually do that? That's going to be the question, because still in this long CBS Sports article, there was nothing about Sports Broadcasting Act so you can pool your rights together so that you could sell TV rights as an entire college football entity, which leads you down the Project Rudy road, which is better for everybody that's not, top upper crust brands in the Big Ten or the SEC. As far as a timetable, no exact timetable on when the commission could come to conclusions. There is a strong desire to find solutions, but they still could be months away. I don't know. I read that and I'm like, months away would be nice. That's, that conversation that we were just having about how much gets done or doesn't get done typically on committees, commissions, whatever. If we're talking about months, it's only going to take months. That is great. Sign me up. My concern here would be that it would take years to get something done. So anyway, they point out the commission won't have the power to change laws, but they can recommend them to Trump and or Congress. Trump wants to be involved in fixing college sports, but with everything else going on in the world, Tuberville said the group wouldn't bring anything to the president until it had an actionable plan. So we do have sort of a blueprint there. Like, you got to lay out an actual plan before you take it anywhere and then hope you can just get it rubber stamped by Congress and or the president and push it through that way. So cross your fingers that it happens in months and that good things actually get done. There are some who have dumped some cold water on all of this. It's not just Adam in the chat. One Power 4 athletic director recently told CBS that they and their colleagues always leave Washington, D.C. dismayed at the prospect of a federal solution coming out of Congress. So they're cynical. They're cynical at this point. I get that. But how about the ending of this article? To put a bow on this whole conversation and back to where we started about the Big 12 really seeming to drive a lot of things here. Instead, it may be college football's greatest coach and a Texas oil billionaire who helped deliver a long-awaited rescue. Quote, I think Nick and Cody can get something done along with President Trump's power. Tuberville said, you're not going to get 6 votes in the Senate, so Trump is going to have to say, look, this is what we're going to do. Greatest coach in the history of college football and a Texas oil billionaire. Big 12 guy, former Big 12 player, Cody Campbell. That's who could be enacting all of this change. Still feeling pretty good. Relatively optimistic about what this could mean with the position of power that Cody Campbell is in. Appreciate you guys for being here. I believe I missed a super chat earlier, so my apologies, Snake. Let me get to that right now. If you want to be like Snake, and get your question or comment on the show, guarantee that. You can click the $ below the chat box, submit a super chat. It will pin it in a separate column for me. Make sure that it gets on the show. Appreciate everybody who does that. Liking the video, subscribing to the channel, totally free. Both of those. Love all of you guys for doing that. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Join 4,000 plus now Big 12 fans who do. Hello, Snake. Snake says, unpopular hot take. Scott Frost is not what UCF needs and will likely keep us in last place in the Big 12. Help me believe otherwise. Snake, I don't know that that's a hot take. I feel bad because this seems like you came to me hoping for me to like shut this down and give you hope. But I've been saying, and you can go back and review the tape when the hire was made, I was really not terribly crazy about West Virginia or UCF going back to the old flame. But I think West Virginia's is a lot more substantive because Rich Rod not only had the success at Jacksonville State, but he has had sustained success at the school before, longer period of time, and then also had a run at another Power 5 school, Arizona, where, he had a double-digit win season. He was pretty effective for a while as a coach at Arizona. Like, there's just a much longer track record that Rich Rod can be a good coach at this level. Scott Frost, man, the problem here is, and UCF fans, like, I'm sorry to throw cold water on all this, but he had one like 500 season, right? Wasn't it 6-7? And then they had the unbeaten season. So he had one phenomenal season at UCF. He did. But that was, I'm going to double check this before I say it, but that was like a 2-year run, right, at UCF. And then it was on to Nebraska, where he had one of the worst runs as a Power 5 head coach that I can really remember seeing. Yeah, it was 6-7 and then 13-0. So if we're talking about your program, your players, all that stuff, this is still in a you're turning the roster over with the transfer portal era. He had one season with a roster that would have a lot of guys he didn't recruit, where he goes 13-0, one great season, and then was 15 games below 500 at Nebraska. He was 10-26 in the Big Ten. And now we're just hiring him back based off of that one season. I have lots of doubts, Snake, lots of doubts. Now, do I think that necessarily means like last place in the Big 12? No, not necessarily. But I am not very optimistic that Scott Frost is like someone who's going to significantly elevate the program from where it's at right now. So I'm sorry, Snake. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. That you came to me with the question, and I didn't want to have to shatter your hopes and dreams, but alas, I did. Boy, Adam spreading some real negativity in here. Well, I'm sorry about that, Adam. Here, Adam, this segment is actually curated specifically for you, because we're going to talk about some Big 12 money problems right now. Tax returns are in. Remember that tax day? We're about a month out, a little over a month out from tax day now. The Big 12 lost money. Big 12 lost money this year. And this is at a time when every school needs every last single penny that they can get in the revenue sharing era. That much is very obvious here. So it was a panic time for the Big 12. And are there any actual solutions here? Let's discuss, because this is pretty nuanced. This is one of those topics that is not made for Twitter, that Twitter wants to just take and use and run wild with. There's just a lot more nuance to it than looking at the straight numbers and not giving any context to them. Okay, so the data comes from USA Today. Deseret News also did a good job of breaking some of this down and putting it together. But there are actually 3, if we're going to go still Power 5 and include the Pac-12 in this for now, 3 of the 5 conferences saw a decline in revenue for the first time in more than a decade, according to the USA Today data, on a school-by-school basis, excluding the 4 new universities, which all receive payouts of $20 million. So that's still your UCF, Houston, BYU, Cincinnati. They're all getting payouts of $20 million. The rest of the Big 12 schools get $37.8 million to $42.1 million in 2024. So the highest payout was $42.1. The ACC's payouts were $43 to $46 million. So the Big 12 was 4th there. Basically, the Pac-12 is very weird because Washington State and Oregon State made more than the ACC and Big 12 individual payouts, but that's because they're getting this like war chest basically stocked up, right? And then everybody else, like the departing schools, your Oregon and Washingtons of the world, they made less money because they had to pay into that war chest. So the Pac-12's financials are all very weird. But for all intents and purposes, what you're looking at here is saying, well, the Big 12 was actually last here. Barely, but last in terms of payout per school. The expectation is, according to USA Today, that revenue will increase for the conference in 2025. But for now, the Big 12 was one of 3 conferences, along with the SEC and Pac-12, that all lost money this year. It was $17 million that the Big 12 lost. Now, I will get to why. There is a very reasonable explanation as to why that happened. It's the same reason that it happened to the SEC. So they're in the same boat of losing money. Now, they're losing money starting at a much higher plane, obviously, than the Big 12 is in terms of the total payouts there. But is this anything to freak out over? No. I don't. To me, this is honestly kind of a nothing burger story that is disguised in like very easy Twitter fodder for people to get angry about and yell about and argue about, when really it's not much, guys. Like, the explanation on the overall money loss for the Big 12 is that it was about a bowl tie-in, because the Sugar Bowl was not a Big 12 tie-in because it was used in the Final Four, and it's the same thing with the SEC there. So that's why you have both of those conferences losing a little bit of money here, which is a rarity and doesn't typically happen. So that's really not a big story. And if you want to say, well, hey, the Big 12 is last in the Power 4 pecking order here, that is definitely a problem when it comes to money. Okay, like, yeah, we can definitely have that conversation. It just has nothing to do with the actual tax returns for this year. Like, nothing changed with this. Maybe this is just laying it bare and like pulling some of the numbers out for somebody to see that hadn't been paying attention. But nothing is really changing. There's nothing we didn't already really know here. The Big 12 needs to be exploring private equity and private capital. That was true before these tax returns came out. That is still true today. It's why the league has been doing it. And it comes all the way back to the conversation that Jamie Pollard was having the other day that we talked about here. He went on a YouTube channel and during an interview said, hey, like the choice is, do we want to keep being Iowa State and going to Sweet 16s and playing for Big 12 championships in football and basketball? Or do we want to be Northern Iowa? Because if we don't get creative to either have the university subsidize us or have students pay more in athletic fees, if we don't get creative and do any of that, that's what's going to happen. Like, we will just turn into Northern Iowa. That's the choice. So these are tough times financially. Like, these schools are having to figure all of this out, and you're probably going to have to get creative to find some way over the long term to bring in more money, whether you want to call it revenue or whatever, to just bring in more money to fund what it is that you're trying to do. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. It just has nothing really to do with these tax returns. You got to get ready to be creative, man. You've got to get ready to be creative. And so maybe to turn this back on my own argument there, this type of thing is important just to show people more of the reality here. You are fourth in the pecking order. You're quite a ways behind the Big Ten and the SEC. All right. The ACC piece of this, comparing those two conferences, I'm going to get to in just a minute, because again, I think that's another one of those that just is like set up for like an argument and yelling which conference is better, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's frankly kind of silly here, but I'll give you like the official wording here from the USA Today article. The reason the Big 12 lost money, bowl revenue. Quote, well, revenue in 4 areas covered by the tax returns increased. Its bowl revenue dropped from just over $157 million in fiscal year 2023 to $110.6 million in 2024. In a statement to USA Today, the Big 12 noted the decline was primarily the result of the college football playoff bowl rotation, which resulted in the Big 12 not being contracted to appear in the Sugar Bowl during this fiscal cycle. The SEC's decline in revenue was similar to that of the Big 12's, a result of the bowl rotation for the college football playoff. Well, the Pac-12's decline was a result of lawsuits. Yeah, look, Pac-12 is a mess. We understand why Pac-12 would be losing money here. So it says in total, the Big 12's total revenue dropped by about $17 million year over year. And the conference had a $37 million operating budget. So, yeah, I would just reinforce here. Are there long-term money problems facing the Big 12, the ACC, and, frankly, kind of everybody? Trying to find the money for revenue sharing is just going to be easier for some. But are there problems for some schools that are going to have it? Yes. They're going to be real problems for schools in the ACC that once the brand initiative kicks in and once the success initiative kicks in and they're making $7 million less per year than they were before, it will be even harder for them. So there are a lot of schools that are going to have this problem. It just didn't change with the release of these tax returns. There's nothing major. This little bowl game thing is not something that's a sign of like a bigger problem directly to that. The big problems already existed. They were already there. Okay. All right. As far as the ACC piece of it, Bob, I see you. I'm going to get to your super chats in just a moment. Let me finish off the ACC piece of this. Okay. Because you might look at these tax returns that were uncovered by USA Today to see the amount of money each conference is taking in, and you would see that the Big 12 paid out less per team than the ACC and say, whoa, okay, ACC payouts are higher than the Big 12 payouts. They should be dunking on us on Twitter, right? The ACC should be taking their shots. They should be dunking all over everybody. This is legitimate cause for concern for the Big 12, right? Like, I think that's, especially in our Twitter world, a very easy conclusion for everybody to draw. But like, is it actually legitimate reason for concern? Because again, think this deserves a much more nuanced look. So as I mentioned, the difference between the payouts, the ACC is paying out 43 to 46 million per school. The Big 12 is paying out 37 to 42. So you've got between a $4 to $6 million difference per year. And again, that's outside of your 3 AAC schools and BYU. It's not a huge difference. First and foremost, like this is, I'm not going to say that it's peanuts. $5 million is $5 million, especially in this day and age. An athletic director would look me in the face and be like, dude, we will take whatever we can get. Okay. So I'm also not going to pretend that it is nothing, but it is not a massive difference. And in fact, I mean, you would have some schools in the ACC that are getting 43 and some in the Big 12 that are getting 42. So in some cases it would be a $1 million difference there. But I also think these are really somewhat irrelevant because the ACC is about to change so much, because the ACC is going to have wildly different numbers here. Their variance will be much higher now moving forward because they're going to have the brand initiative payout and they're going to have the success initiative payout. So you'll have some teams that might be adding an extra 10, 15, $20 million per year. You'll have some that will be losing. I believe one of the stories earlier had reported that $7 million would be like the most that you could lose for those schools' sake. I hope that's what it is, but you can then see how much of a variance they will have. All right. Now, it seemed like some took that and said, well, one, look, the ACC is already making more, and now they're doing the success and brand initiatives. They are smart. They're coming up with creative ways to do this. They are ahead of the Big 12 in that. And I would say, okay, let's pump the brakes on the success and brand initiatives part of this, which is just a nicer way to say unequal revenue sharing. Unequal revenue sharing has a very negative connotation. Brand and success initiative, that sounds better. Hey, you have success, you make more money. That sounds great. Well, it's also unequal revenue sharing, which generally leads to a ton of problems. And it's like a last resort. It's not something you would do unless, I don't know, you were desperately trying to keep these teams in your league, because you were embroiled in 4 different lawsuits in multiple different states, and it was just a total mess. That seems to be the case here. It was the last straw for the ACC to just try and keep everyone together. And we can quibble over a couple $1 million per school in payouts, but the real existential threat is not, hey, we have some bigger brands, so we have a slightly higher payout. That's not the lifeblood of what is going to keep you together. Stability is what's going to keep you together, like teams actually staying in your conference. And that is something the Big 12 has much more of than the ACC, even with the settlement and all that, with Florida State and Clemson like backing off the lawsuits for right now. What that basically did was just lock in, hey, in 5 years, in all overwhelming likelihood, the ACC is going to be done one way or another, whether that's evolving into a Project Rudy type of Super League, or it's just going to be getting poached at that point when the next wave of realignment comes. I mean, I guess you could say, well, the ACC in this form, right? In this form as we know it right now, stability is still a big problem with the ACC, even if they have put a Band-Aid on it for the next 5 years. And that's the real currency here. It's not just when we're talking about $1 to $5 million difference, that's not enough currency to make a difference to overcome the stability thing. So I don't view it as some major win in relation to the Big 12 that the ACC has gone with this unequal revenue sharing plan to get the settlement and make everything work. I mean, the Big 12 just doesn't have the threat of the conference dissolving, because I don't know, unless you're reading fog.net or whatever the most popular Utah message board out there is, not entirely sure what that is. There's not a real threat of anybody leaving the Big 12 for one of the big 2 conferences. Okay. And like I said, if there's anybody, the other ironic part, if there's anybody who knows about just how damaging unequal revenue sharing is, it is the Big 12, ironically. The Big 12 has dealt with this with Texas and the Longhorn Network. Everybody around the Big 12 knows what it does. It causes problems. It fosters resentment. It's going to create a bunch of tension and problems for everybody in the conference. And the problem is the teams that are getting more money, that Texas in that case, Florida State, Clemson, et cetera. In this case, like they've got all the leverage. It doesn't matter. If you're going to get mad at them and complain, it's just going to push them further out. And they're going to wait until that buyout money to get out of the conference drops, the exit fee drops, and then they're going to be gone sooner rather than later. It's not like that was some great solution. The ACC's problem has never been like, oh, hey, we are dramatically behind the Big 12 in terms of finances. It's just been stability. So they are in a period right now of relative stability to what the last like 18 months to 24 months. I'm trying to remember when specifically the Florida State Clemson lawsuit started. They're in a period of relative stability compared to that. But that's because at that point you had literally your most high profile member going to board meetings and talking publicly on a live stream about like, oh yeah, we're leaving. We're getting out. Like we're going to figure it out. We'll find a way. That was the bar. That's what we're comparing it to. Florida State and Clemson are still very much getting out of here one way or another. You've just basically set an official timetable on it now and kicked the can down the road. So the ironic thing is well, the ACC does have bigger. I mean, look, I've acknowledged many times the ACC has bigger brands for sure. They've got a team that's getting legit national title buzz right now in Clemson. They've got a team that just landed the number one player in the country in 2026 in Miami. They've got better brands. They've got some better brands at the top. But if you're talking about every school outside of Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, every other school is in the virtual exact same position. Because especially in success and brand initiative world in the ACC, the payouts between the entirety of the Big 12 and the rest of those guys in the ACC is going to be very, very similar. And the fate of all of those teams, once 2030 hits and we go to the next iteration of whatever this is going to be, the fate of all of those schools, it is very much the same. Whether it's some schools coming over to the Big 12 or the ACC regaining some sort of conference, but it's without the big brands there, then it'll just be, it'll be the Spider-Man meme of everybody like looking at each other like it's the exact same thing. So I think some of the fighting between ACC and Big 12 that I have seen over this is frankly a little bit silly. Like everybody ultimately, especially most of the people that are fighting and arguing about this is really in the same boat. That's a generalization, but I don't think that Clemson and Florida State fans really care as much to be like fighting with Big 12 fans over this. That's not really where their head is at. It's going to be everybody else that's doing it. I don't know that it's worth the fight. Everybody is generally kind of in the same class. The payouts are going to be very much the same moving forward between all of those schools. It's nothing to really get too hung up on, would be my opinion on that. You can take it or leave it, but that's what I've got to say to you. Bob, okay. Thank you for waiting patiently, Bob. I appreciate you. If you want to be a part of the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box. You can attach a super chat there to get your question or comment on the show. Bob says, what schools would provide the most value to the Big 12 if they won playoff games? Achievement being the same, which school would bring the most value? That's an interesting question. Like, if you're going to have a school in the Big 12 win multiple playoff games, who would you want it to be because of basically how big of a profile they could build and what that would add to the conference? I mean, I see you're a Texas Tech fan. Obviously, my mind drifts there first, just because Texas Tech already has, in some ways, the respect of the college football world from just buying up a bunch of talent, because nothing speaks to the national college football heads who cover the sport more than just talent, right? How much discussion is there about that? The blue chip ratio. That's how you get into those discussions consistently and don't get treated as just like a cute little side project. It's by accumulating talent that registers on all of the lists that they look at of talent. And so Texas Tech has done that. We now know that they've got this booster that can pay for more talent moving forward, unless Deloitte is going to just totally crack down on all of that. So there is probably some value in Texas Tech doing that, as long as they continue to do it with number 1, number 2, number 3, whatever, like top 5, top 10 portal classes and recruiting classes. If it includes that and it's somebody who is legitimately accumulating talent, that's how you get the respect of everybody who's covering the sport at a national level. Arizona State definitely has some buzz built up now. They could very much be in the discussion. I would still almost say, though, like, Utah. I come back to Utah a lot with this because they have been so consistently good. And I know people would say good, maybe not great, but they had been so consistently good for a long time. And especially with the back-to-back Pac-12 titles, playing in Rose Bowls built up a lot of national notoriety. There's so much respect for Kyle Whittingham. I still think Utah could be one that would be very beneficial. BYU, probably the only problem with BYU, like I look at it and say, well, BYU's got a national brand because of the LDS Church. They have a national championship in 1984, right? I mean, there are some things working to their advantage, but I look at how they got treated last year, and I guess you could say, well, John, that was because of low expectations before the season. You're right. That is definitely a part of it. But man, I don't know. I think some of it is the talent thing. Like BYU didn't have a roster full of guys that registered high on any transfer portal list or recruiting rankings. And so there's just this perception that it's this kid that's been coached up from Logan, Utah all over the roster and not a really talented one. This isn't basketball with AJ DeBonsta. So I don't know that it registers quite enough on that. So I guess TCU, I think TCU has played in a national championship, won a playoff game recently. They've had multiple 12-plus win seasons in the last 10 years. I think TCU would be in that conversation. They are somewhat, they've always been like on the periphery of some of these conversations of, could you make it to the Big Ten or SEC someday? And a lot of it has to do with where they play in DFW. So where are we at? We're at Texas Tech, TCU, Arizona State. Did I mention anybody else other than saying BYU? It might be a little more iffy. Those, I think, are the schools that come to mind to me off the top of my head. It's like K-State, probably not a big enough national brand, even though there's a lot of respect for Chris Kleiman. Baylor has had some of that top end success and is probably like close to being in that conversation. Like maybe Baylor could. Their star has just fallen a little bit here in the last few years. I forgot an obvious one, I guess. Colorado, but only with the caveat of if it's Coach Prime. If it's Coach Prime. Like that is what makes it such a fascinating one to dissect here. This is a really good question, Bob. If Coach Prime is at Colorado, it is very helpful. If it's not, it's just, your average coach that's not nearly as much of a draw. People will lose some interest in Colorado as soon as Deion goes, if he goes, whether or not the next coach wins. There will be less people watching the games. We all understand how this works by now after we've seen the TV ratings for Colorado. So if Deion is there, though, and they're going to the playoff, man, that thing will get crazy. So that one that does have the most upside. Curious who you think would add the least. Oh boy. Put me in a tough spot there. I hate doing it. Maybe like Cincinnati, Houston, schools that just have not had as high a profile, have struggled the last couple of years. And I do know Cincinnati, all due respect for the playoff appearance in 2021 with Luke Fickell, back in the old playoff, right? But there's just not a lot of juice right now surrounding the program. I guess off the top of my head, that's where I would go with that. I mean, I think like your Iowa State, K-States of the world, because of their location, don't always garner as much respect as they probably should. Those are some thoughts there. But maybe some of those have started to change a little bit. Okay. Thank you for the questions, Bob. I appreciate you on that. Please do like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate all the guys who do that and who are here. You can subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, which just surpassed 4,000 subscriptions. You can do that at ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. Appreciate everybody who does that. And let's see. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo is another way to get in touch. If you're not watching this live and you want to get a question or comment in, I'll kick off the next show with your question or comment if you submit it to John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. So appreciate all of you guys who do that. All right. I've got one more topic for you here tonight. one more topic for you, and that is we're going to start with this. All right, so we're going to talk Big 12 games of the year. That is definitely a piece of this, but it's all going to branch off of something that I saw on Twitter this week. Okay, so we do have Big 12 games of the year. I promise I will get to those here in just a moment. But to lead into it, I wanted you all to look at this. All right, this is from College Football Budge, CF Budge. Here's an industry composite top 25. So he averaged out the post-spring top 25s from ESPN, CBS, On3, and then his own ranking. Okay, so there is a little bit of individual bias here from College Football Budge, but this is what he put together in terms of everybody's rankings. So it gives you a gauge of where the Big 12 schools are at right now. Arizona State's at 10, BYU's at 13, Iowa State at 18, K-State 22, Texas Tech 23, and then you've got Baylor here just outside, basically at number 30. So that is what we have in terms of expectation setting here. We're thinking about Big 12 games of the year. Here's what the nation thinks right now about these teams in the Big 12, who is going to be the best this year and who would be the teams primed to be playing in whatever you think the games of the year are going to be in the conference. Okay. So by my count there, that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I miss one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. 6 teams in the top 30, 6 Big 12 teams in the top 30. Now, mileage will vary on this depending on how you feel about those rankings. And the only thing I'm really adding to the way that I rank these is that Baylor at 30 is a little low for my blood. I am pretty high on Sawyer Robertson and the Bears. So I do have Baylor involved in a couple of my Big 12 games of the year. If you want to call this a cop-out, that is totally fair to call it a cop-out, but I'm giving you 5 games in no particular order here, plus a long list of honorable mention games. All right. I'm going to do honorable mention after I give you the 5 games of the year because it's just so damn long. Like when you have this many teams that I think are all up there at the top, it's hard to decipher what's actually going to be a game of the year. And sometimes I am just completely wrong. Last year, I really hyped up. I think that UCF Utah game at the end of the year is going to be great. That's going to be a sneaky, really big game. And that was literally one of the least significant Big 12 games of the entire season because it was at the end of the year and there were no bowl implications, like literally nothing on the line except for pride in that game. So take it with a grain of salt, folks. But here are my 5, okay? The top 5 Big 12 games of the year. No particular order. Once again, no particular order. But here's what I got. Arizona State at Iowa State. Arizona State at Iowa State is one that I have here. Iowa State, you just saw pretty high at 18 in that composite ranking. That feels like it might be, I mean, it's close. Like I would probably have Iowa State more like 20 to 25. I think the big question there is their receivers. How much of those two who clearly were coveted by the NFL, how much were those two responsible for the success of Rocco Becht? Like we'll find out. But Arizona State and Iowa State, I mean, if Arizona State really is the top dog in this league, that is a what of a place to go play. You're not going to want to go play in Ames, Iowa. So I look at that immediately and say, that's going to be an awesome game. If there are stakes, if Arizona State is still in the top 10, like they are in this composite ranking for sure. But man, they're having to go. This is late October. No, literally November 1st. Okay. So you can say this is Arizona State, team from very, very warm climate, having to go play in Ames, Iowa in November. Sounds like a recipe for a loss. And it sounds like a recipe for a really, really awesome game. So there is one. You guys knew this game was going to be on the list, right? I had plenty of people respond on Twitter to this when I asked. Obviously, the Holy War is one of the Big 12 games of the year. BYU comes in at number 13 on this composite top 25. I would probably have them in tier 2 of the Big 12 right now, but that still puts them very much within striking distance of the Big 12 title, up at the top of the league. And I also have Utah, man, maybe in tier 1 or tier 2. I mean, kind of waffling between both of those right now. I think they'll both be very good teams this year. And so getting a rematch of that game, I honestly, I don't even care that much about where these two teams are at. We saw how good of a game it was last year. And we have all the storylines from last season about the controversy of the holding call and Mark Harlan's press conference and what happened there. Dude, that's going to be awesome. That is going to be awesome. So that is one of my Big 12 games of the year. Texas Tech at Arizona State. Got a lot of people pushing this one on Twitter. I can understand why. Texas Tech, I was honestly a little surprised in the composite ranking was only at 23 because I have seen them as high as 11. But they're one where you can understand why there's a lot of variance. If you buy into just the talent, you could definitely have them up in the top 10, top 15. If you're thinking about the reality of what that program has been, you're going to have them probably outside of the top 25. Texas Tech going to Arizona State on paper does look like a really good game right now. That is the presumptive favorite, the team that won it last year and kept their quarterback, kept their coach, kept their coaching staff, still has a bona fide, legit number one receiver against the team that went out and spent a bunch of money and got the best portal class in the country. That very much sets the table for a great game in Tempe. Another one, this will be a surprise because I saw Dan mention Farmageddon. I actually have K-State at Baylor on this list. K-State at Baylor, and this shows how high I am on the Bears. But I think that will be a really, really fun, entertaining, and good game, and that is one of those that I have circled on the K-State schedule that probably isn't getting talked about enough. And some of that is because K-State starts the season with week 0 in Ireland against Iowa State. So it's a little bit overshadowed, perhaps. A little bit overshadowed. But I'm putting K-State Baylor on this list. And speaking of Baylor, Arizona State also has to go to Baylor. Look at that Baylor home schedule, man. Arizona State's got to go there too. That could be quarterback matchup of the year in the Big 12, right? Man, you get Sam Levitt against Sawyer Robertson. That absolutely could be Big 12 quarterback matchup of the year. Arizona State and Baylor. So those were the 5 that I singled out right now that I would put down if you made me pick a list of the Big 12 games of the year so far this year. That's what I would have. Now, the honorable mention, it's just littered, okay? So the first one I have on my honorable mention list is Farmageddon in Ireland, as Dan said, K-State, Iowa State. Okay, why did that not make the list? Why did I go with Baylor above that? There's something about, like, the fact that it's week 0 and it's overseas, like it's in a different country. You know, if this were a game in November in Manhattan, I think it probably makes the list because that just has more of like a big time feel to it to me. Like the stakes would be more clear at that point in the year. Like this is just going to be beginning of the year. Everybody's feeling each other out. We don't really know what either of those teams is going to be for the season. It just, it takes away a little bit of something in this context to me. So that's why I didn't put it there. Texas Tech at Utah, that's a week 4 game. I think that could be that's a really tricky test, man, for the Red Raiders to be able to prove that they're legit. That's a tricky test. I've got TCU at Arizona State. TCU you'll see appear a couple of times here in the honorable mention because I think there's somebody that is also sneaking up there into potentially like tier 2 territory in the Big 12 and could really be a dark horse and a surprise. TCU's got a great Josh Hoover. How we have this quarterback conversations in the Big 12. Josh Hoover does not get talked about enough at all, man, in terms of how good he is. There's a reason that Tennessee really pursued him. And I do think Sonny Dykes is fairly average as a head coach, but he's averaging 9 wins a season. He did coach in a national championship game. And at some point I've got to go facts over my feelings a little bit on him and say that TCU is probably going to be pretty good. We'll see what they can do at Arizona State. Arizona State's got to go to Utah. You know, speaking of a team with a really interesting home schedule, here's another one. K-State's got to go to Utah. Okay. So you look at this. And as I talk about Utah being a team that can really surprise this year, they've got Texas Tech, Arizona State, and K-State all coming to their place. Not easy to win at Rice-Eccles, my friends. Not easy to win there. So that Utah very much can be a factor just by virtue of the schedule, it would appear. Baylor TCU, great rivalry game. Great rivalry game between Baylor and TCU in week 8. And both of those teams could be very, very good this year. Texas Tech has to go to K-State in week 10. K-State's home schedule, a little sparse this year because Iowa State is supposed to be a home game. Now, obviously, it's in Ireland. That's going to be the best home game on K-State's schedule. That will be a game that I think Manhattan will be very up for. And Texas Tech has just had a hell of a time with K-State. So very, very interesting one in week 10. I like that a lot. Brett, you nailed it. The last one I have for you here is BYU at Texas Tech. That is week 11. BYU at Texas Tech. So, yeah, for that one, BYU we had the Holy War. We got the Holy War and then Texas Tech, and this is part of the thing with BYU. Their schedule looks pretty damn manageable. BYU has a very favorable schedule. That is the reason that you're only seeing them twice on this list. Not really any kind of statement on what BYU is going to be. It's just like they seem like they have a very, very manageable schedule this year. So the two biggest games there are going to be them hosting Utah and then going to Texas Tech. Going to Texas Tech, that should be a really, really tough game. Really tough game. I see Brett saying brutal 3 games for BYU at the end. Let's go see what that is. BYU gets a lot of the teams that are going to be picked toward the bottom of the preseason poll. We'll say that. Oh, brutal last 3 games. TCU at Cincinnati and UCF. Man, I don't know about that. Okay. You must be talking about, okay, I see the stretch here. Before the last 3 games, they've got Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech. That is a difficult stretch. But outside of that, man, it's Colorado, West Virginia, Arizona, TCU, Cincinnati, UCF. That's very manageable. Very, very manageable. At Iowa State and at Texas Tech, that's a tough couple of road games there. And I guess probably should have included BYU at Iowa State, a list of honorable mention games. We can throw that one in there too. I see BYU football saying that. So yeah, both of those games should belong on that list. These are all candidates for your Big 12 game of the year, but who last year had I guess we could have had if we're talking about just theatrics, the Holy War was probably your game of the year last year. But in terms of importance, the way it shook out, that BYU Arizona State game really was the game of the year, and nobody had that on the docket at the beginning of the year. So this could be very, very, very different and look very silly at the end of the year, just like last year. Just putting that out there. All right, fun talking a little ball with everybody. I've got at least one super chat. No, two super chats here. All right, what's up, Zachary? Appreciate you, Zachary. Thank you for being here. Zachary said, noted Kansas State is getting more pub than expected. Not seeing update us. Okay, so K-State, I will admit, has gotten a little bit more love this offseason than I expected. I think a lot of that does have to do with, one, the respect that Chris Kleiman has built up, but two, Avery Johnson is a name, right? People across college football really know the name Avery Johnson. He had so much hype last year and had a solid to good season, albeit not great, and it was wildly inconsistent with some really low moments. But because of his name value, I think that's a big part of why K-State gets a lot of respect. Now, I actually really like what K-State did this offseason a ton everywhere but Avery Johnson. And so to me, it all comes down to, can he take that next step? But I would not have expected, I would have thought last year would have pulled some people off and been like, okay, 2 years in a row now after the Big 12 championship, we have expected K-State to go do it again. And they kind of let us down a little bit. So maybe we take a year off of doing that. But that is not the case. That is not the case. A lot of expectations for the Cats still. Alan, what's up, Alan? Appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for being here. Alan says, John, always enjoy your show. Have you ever thought of an interview format? Who would you interview? Well, I have done plenty of interviews before. Some of that is really just a bandwidth thing. Like if I weren't working a full-time job and, running the newsletter and doing everything I could just to keep up with that, I would definitely try to do more interviews and put them here on the channel. Like I used to do a lot more of that. There's also a part of it where it's like, if we're talking how the sausage is made, 2 interviews typically perform on average significantly better than just my own content. No. So that's a part of it when I'm trying to justify like what work am I going to do, like triage what work I can do and what I can handle with my schedule. But I do love them. I mean, I don't know. I can remember one of the last ones. I feel like John Wilner a while back was one of the last ones. He was great. I love talking to him. Shahan J. Raja, I've had on a couple of times from CBS Sports. I think he's one of the absolute best and most fun follows in college football right now. He is awesome. Obviously, there was the Ross Dellinger interview from Big 12 Media Days last year. So, I'd love to do more of that, getting those type of guys on. If I were just doing this full time, then you would certainly be getting a lot more of like just your local beat guys covering everything. I did an interview on Josh Furlong's podcast who covers Utah. I think he's really good. I mean, there are people all over the league who do just an awesome job covering their team. So I'd love to do a little bit more dipping in on local squads there, but I don't know, man. So you guys would have to come in with some wild super chats for me to be able to do it on a full-time basis. So if anybody's getting an unexpected inheritance that they need to unload, you can do that, and then maybe I can do it full-time. But yeah, it's really just a bandwidth thing, Alan. I love interviews. Doing a radio show for 10 years, I did a bunch of them. I enjoy it. I do feel like I'm pretty well connected across the Big 12 and could get you some. I will try to work them in when I can, but it is, especially now with the newsletter too, on top of the job, it does get a little bit tricky. Let's see. Sunflower Showdown game of the year. Oh, okay. Jayhawks going back to a bowl this year. Rock Chalk Jayhawk Allen. Yeah, last year that would have been in the conversation for at this time. Hey, this may be the game of the year. Kind of disappointed by the time that we got there, and then K-State disappointed after that game to make it really stand up as something that was worthwhile and significant. But anyway, it is what it is. Kansas very well could get back to a bowl this year. There will be a new layer to the Sunflower Showdown this year, with it being in the renovated Memorial Stadium that's going to be up and running this year. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Hey, I mean, honestly, the way the game played out last year was had a good ending, pretty thrilling kind of game. So that from that standpoint, in terms of just a close game toward the end that had a fun finish, K-State KU could have been up there toward being the game of the year. So appreciate you, Alan. Maybe I rambled on a little bit too much there, but you got your money's worth, Alan. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Okay. Please like the video on your way out. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, make sure all of you guys on Twitter out there join the 4,000 plus who now subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. You can get all the big stories in college football, how they relate to the Big 12, straight to your inbox for free twice a week. And all you have to do is go to ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. If you're on Twitter, the link is in my bio. You just go look at the bio on my Twitter page. You will see the link to that. It is very, very easy to do. And thank you for everybody who has already subscribed and helped me get to 4,000 in less than a year. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday nights and have a great start to your week. I will talk to you guys all very soon. Take care.